Fixing a droopy booty is one of the things I'm known for as a trainer. I have a system, it's 3 categories. It's not a bunch of donkey kickbacks or whatever the hell the latest and greatest glute guide is, where it's all isolation nonsense. 3-part system, guaranteed to get your glutes to grow. I'm gonna share it with you today. What's going on, family? It's Marv, onerep-at-a-time.net. Yep, 3-part system, get your glutes to grow. So we have activate, exercises, and form. All 3 of them are equally important. However, you may not have to do all 3 parts of these based on your body, your experience level. Are you comfortable with all the exercises here? Do you have all these mental cues and form checks in order? All of that. So it's gonna be kind of customized up to you, but this is my system that I've used to get a droopy booty to come up and go back to life no matter what age. I've had people anywhere from I think 21-year-old women to in their 60s being, holy crap, my booty is looking amazing. So let's start with activate. I could start anywhere with these categories: activate, exercises, or form checks, or mental cues, whatever you want to call them. But let's start with activate. So activate, this means at 1 rep at a time. If we have a hard time connecting to specific muscle groups, we have these things that we call activation exercises, which gets us that connection where we can feel the muscle to actually fire so you can connect to the muscle. Now, when somebody's first starting out though, I don't care about that so much as I want to get proper form down for the major lifts. So let's get your form down for squatting, for rowing, bench pressing, Romanian deadlift, potentially traditional deadlift or rack pull based on your results. End goals for everybody to deadlift, but we might not be able to start there yet. Overhead press, basic core exercises. Let's get that down first, get your form. And if we do all these little form checks or mental cues, oftentimes we can connect to all the different muscles. But if somebody is what's known as quad dominant, where their quads take over traditional, booty building exercises like a deadlift or a squat, we do these activation exercises. So again, they are not mandatory, but whenever you squat or deadlift or split squat or lunge and your quads take over, so your quads are getting bigger and you have a flat butt, guess what? You have to do activation exercises. So I do, well, really 2, but there's 3 up here, depends where you're at. Activation exercises based on the next movement you're going to do. So pull-throughs is one of the first things I teach anybody. Slow your roll, man. Might have had a little bit too much coffee. I do pull-throughs as a way to teach a hip hinge pattern, which is going to be your Romanian deadlift, known as a RDL, or your traditional deadlift, or a rack pull if we're starting you off at a rack pull. Okay, so pull-throughs. Love them, love them, love them. Forms, this hips forward and squeeze is going to come into play here, but whenever we do a hip hinge movement, you're going to do your pull-through, and it's going to go for those exercises. So, yeah, in fact, that's also sometimes the first exercise I teach anybody, even a man. So if they're willing to do that, they're willing to go to any lengths, because it is kind of silly to do. But I'm a huge fan of pull-throughs. I do them myself. What the hell is a pull-through? Looks something like that. And you're making sure you're just practicing a hip hinge movement, making sure your hips come back towards the wall as you fold forward. When you come up, you need to push your hips all the way forward and squeeze those glutes. We'll talk about that more in the form check, but keep that in mind. Every time you hip hinge, okay, where we fold back, we need to get our hips all the way forward. So come all the way forward, squeeze those glutes for a count of 2 to 3 seconds. Fold forward, let your hips come back. So I always tell people, picture pressing your butt against the wall, come up, hips all the way forward, squeeze those glutes, crack that acorn between your cheeks. So that is a pull through. Now, what if you're going to do any sort of squat? So, and by squat, it could be a goblet squat with a dumbbell, a barbell back squat, a front squat, a Zercher squat. We have split squats, so Bulgarian split squats, or a lunge or a step up. So any type of lower body push movement, because that is what those are. Those are our lower body push movements. You will do either a hip thrust or what's known as a glute bridge or a floor bridge. Okay, the hip thrust is the more advanced version of a glute bridge or a floor bridge. So either or, they both work. Here, let's start off with the hip thrust. So getting in position is a little of a pain in the ass, but essentially you're dropping down and coming up, and once again, hips have to be completely elevated. We actually want to get what's known as an anterior pelvic tilt, so your hips are up as far as they possibly can, where you're arching your low back. You drop down nice and controlled. If you notice, you hold that top position for 3 seconds. There's going to be a common theme when it comes to activation exercises. Or let's move on to the glute bridge or the floor bridge. Same thing, drop down. The most important thing is how high can I get my hips? I actually want to get my hips forward. A lot of people will shortchange the range of motion, which happens to be under form, and so they don't get that maximum glute activation. Again, you squeeze those glutes as hard as you can for 3 seconds. I guarantee if you do pull-throughs before any sort of deadlift or rack pull movement, or hip thrusts or glute bridges before any sort of lower body pressing or pushing movement, you're gonna feel it in your glutes to the point where you might have to do less weight or less reps. But again, we're not focused merely on how much weight we get on the bar, right? Our muscles don't know the number on the side of the weight plate. They just know the quality of the tension and contraction they have to generate. Quality trumps quantity, specifically when you're trying to bring up a lagging body part. So those are our activation exercises. No, they are not mandatory, but if you have a hard time feeling your glutes work when we're doing these exercises, it's time to step your game up. So when it comes to exercises, Romanian deadlifts, okay, that is a hip hinge movement where you're really focusing on the glutes, the hamstrings, and the low back. It looks something like this, similar to the pull through. I want you to picture pressing your butt against the wall. When you come all the way forward, you need to literally extend your hips all the way forward and squeeze your glutes as hard as you possibly can. Everybody will shortchange that last 2 to 3 inches of full contraction. That is a big difference. Can you not visualize what I'm talking about? Here's what I mean right now. That full contraction of the hips forward where we actually squeeze our glutes hard. Nobody will do that Romanian deadlift. Why? It's a pain in the ass, literally and figuratively, but I guarantee you'll get your glutes to grow. With deadlifts are simply phenomenal for glute gain. Whether you do a sumo, which is a wide stance, which I use personally, or traditional, deadlifts are phenomenal for your booty. Again, make sure you're getting full extension at the hips. Now, I don't need you to lean back and arch your back, but we need to get full extension of the hips. So those are our hip hinge movements for your booty. Now we have a squat, any type of a squat, a goblet squat, like I said, zercher, front, back, whatever. Squats are king for booty development. Then we have our split stance squats. Bulgarian split squats, I freaking love those. That is my game changer for booty development. Just on a side note, and that looks something like this. Sorry, I get a little excited apparently. Always use dumbbells, never do a barbell on your back. I'm not a big fan of that. And the ultimate athletic move is a jumping Bulgarian split squat. You will never feel your glutes as sore as the day after, the 2 days after you do jumping Bulgarian split squats, but that is a very advanced movement. Typically though, split squats is my secret weapon. Okay, then we also have lunges, which are easier than split squats. So typically I start somebody on a lunge first. And then we also have step ups. And with step ups, there is a big thing on form. So when I talk about a step up, I want that slow 3-second descent on the way down where you're overloading your glute. It's getting stretched, which is going to create a lot of tissue damage, which, believe it or not, is what we want. So make sure you have a slow and controlled negative. Now with all these exercises, form still matters. We are big on mental cues here. If you haven't watched any of our exercise tutorials, I highly recommend you do so. And we can blow you away with mental cues, tips, tricks, hacks, whatever. So we can actually feel the muscles working where we want. Okay, hips forward. And in parentheses, I have squeeze. Like I showed you earlier, when a lot of people will stop those 2 or 3 inches short. Really, those 2 to 3 inches is really where your glutes actually can fully take over and contract, okay, and they shorten. So squeeze those glutes hard. Do not shortchange your depth forward. Even on squatting, people will not fully bring their hips forward. It is a waste. So wasted opportunity. Squeeze your glutes hard every time you do any sort of lower body movement at the top position. Number 2, spread the floor. Whenever you're doing any sort of a squat, as you come up out of the hole, I want you to picture spreading the floor with your feet. This will activate what is known as your glute med, your side butt muscle. Okay, it's actually going to make you stronger. It's going to prevent your knees from caving in. That is a mental cue that I don't see reiterated enough. Spread the floor with your feet as you come up out of the hole when you do any sort of squat. No, your feet aren't going to move, but you're gonna feel your glutes turn on. It'll feel like your hamstrings are turned on, but really we're getting those hip external rotators to turn on. It's very important. It also prevents, like I said, knee caving in, so that is a cue that I don't see enough. And then range of motion. If you have the ability to squat full range of motion, squat full range of motion. Don't do these half-ass squats where you only do a quarter squat at the very top. Now, of course, yes, because your glutes are fully shortened in that top position with the hips forward, you're gonna feel a burn, but you really need a full range of motion. A full range of motion will trump heavier weight with a shorter range of motion. Unless you are an athlete, do full range of motion if you can. Now that's gonna be based on your mobility. So staying up on mobility drills is gonna be of the extreme importance. But if you can do full range of motion, I'd rather you do a greater range of motion with a lighter weight than to overload it and shorten your range of motion. So range of motion is key, and that includes hips forward and squeeze at the top. So if you do all three things, I guarantee your glutes are going to grow. When it comes to the exercises, obviously do not do all of them in a single workout. Now, is it a good idea to do potentially all of them in a given week? Absolutely. Specifically, even the lunge and the step up or the split squat. People neglect what's known as unilateral or one side at a time training, and that glute med, that side butt muscle that we don't get to fire, and that gives us nice little outer curves on it, is often neglected. So absolutely make sure you're doing some sort of one leg movement during the week. Please, if you can, make sure you're squatting at least twice a week, if not more. Remaining deadlift or deadlift. Deadlift at least once a week. Deadlift can be, as you get really strong, really draining on the central nervous system. So that's going to be based on you, but deadlift at least once a week. Remaining deadlift you can get away with a lot more often than a traditional deadlift. But make sure you are squatting, some sort of hip hinge, and a unilateral movement throughout the week. I promise your legs, well no, your butt will blow up. Your legs will too, but we want to get your butt. If you do not feel your butt firing, do pull-throughs before your remaining deadlift or deadlift, or do a hip thrust or a glute bridge before your squat or your lunge or your one leg movement. And one more time. Hips all the way forward, squeeze those glutes, get full activation. I mean, here, one more thing. Put your hand on your butt right now. Okay, you have your hips back a little bit. Come all the way forward. Even if you extend your hips, you can feel your glutes turn on. That's what I want you to train. Spread the floor when you come up out of the hole when you're doing any sort of squat. And full range of motion is far superior than quarter reps pumping. We're not doing Pilates. When we do Pilates, do Pilates. When we're doing weight training, do weight training. There's a big difference. Do those things. I guarantee your glutes are gonna grow. If you like this video, you're gonna try it yourself. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, share this video with friends and family and loved ones, or your significant other if you want a little oomph in their caboose. Just don't tell them that I told you to do that. But share that with them, and if you could, any comments down below, let me know how this goes, or if you want to see us do a video, let that know as well down below. I will come back periodically to check on comments. Remember, we do anything we want, one day at a time, one meal at a time, one set at a time, one rep at a time. And PPS, because you stayed around to the end of the video, if you look in the description box, every single exercise on here outside of hip thrust, sorry, I don't have it done at the moment, there's going to be an exercise tutorial for, even if it is a private video for clients only, because you stuck around, I gave you that info. So make sure you check those out. Talk to you soon, family.